Paperback Rocker, episode 92. Hey, this is Matt Severson, the Paperback Rocker, and I'm broadcasting from my 6x9 foot cinder block shack in the desert of northern Mexico, southern Texas. Welcome and thanks for checking out my show.
Broadcasting from a 9-foot cinder block shack somewhere in the desert. It's the Paperback Rocker Show.
Is there anybody out there?
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your old friend, ye old Paperback Rocker, back again with volume 36 of the Blue Whiskey novel. A novel that I wrote, actually, and it's available on Amazon. And it is, all my books have... all of them have paperback. No, actually, Blue Whiskey doesn't have paperback. Blue Whiskey is hardback only, but the others have paperback. And some, one other book I have, Black Dog, has another beautiful hardback. My mom has a hardback book called Wildflowers and Broken Gods, which is a memoir I edited. And it is a story of our family's 1 year existence living in a remote Greek village, a dirt road village, and the simple life that we learn to appreciate. That's why I can live in a 6x9 foot cinder block shack in a desert / swamp and still be supremely satisfied. Okay, where we left off last time was Stanton Wheelhouse, our hero, and Reuben, his companion, were driving, and they had just eaten soul food in Jackson, Mississippi, and were in a library, a Carnegie, depending on how you want to pronounce it, library. There was even a town called Carnegie, very close to where I grew up, which was populated by Indians, aka Native Americans, and we used to have some really, really good baseball, football, and basketball games against them. That was a lot of fun. And I went through that town recently when I went back. One of the last couple times I went back to Oklahoma and saw that town. All of the towns in Oklahoma look like they're going to dry up and blow away. But that's probably the way they looked when I was there too. I just didn't realize it. Okay, so our heroes, at this time there are two heroes right now. They are in a library, which is in a house, basically. Having explored the layout together, Reuben and I split up to peruse the actual books. Each one I picked up was ancient. I looked at their library cards and saw that none of them had ever been checked out, unless the cards were new, but they didn't look like it. I found Reuben and said, "Reuben, let's pick out some books for me. I need a college education real bad, and I'm not going to college." Reuben looked at me and smiled. This was right up his alley. "Do you think she'll let us check them out?" I asked. "Let's give it a shot," he said. "You don't ask, you don't get." I'll remember that. The old lady was back at her post, looking alert and revived following her cigarette break. "Yes, boys," she said when she saw us coming her way. We took an impromptu tag team approach. "It's like this," Reuben said. "We're not from here," I continued. "But this boy needs some education," Reuben said, motioning to me. "And we're both honest as all get out," I said. "It's against..." Oh, I was trying to go real fast. "It's against policy to lend to out-of-towners," she said, wedging herself into the conversation. "We completely understand," I said, "but don't you need to get rid of some of your older books? They're hopelessly out of date." "Books are never out of date," she said, kind of offended. "I don't mean it like that," I said. "Most of your books have never been checked out. It's not hard to imagine dry rot passing through this whole place." "Dry rot?" she said with alarm. "Hold that thought, ma'am," I said. I motioned for Reuben to join me in a private conference on the other side of the room. What? He asked. Whatever's named Carnegie inspired me, I said. We should make a donation. That'll loosen her grip. You're talking about my money, aren't you? I'm broke, I said. Reuben gave me a look that said many things. He turned around and walked back to the old lady, and I followed. We have a proposition for you, he said. I'm listening. For an old woman, she seemed very shrewd. I'd like to donate $200 to your library if you'll let us take some of your old books with us. To prevent dry rot, I said. The old lady blushed and said, Oh my, like she had overheard a dirty joke. $200 was a lot of money back then. Long story short, the Carnegie Library of Jackson, Mississippi received its largest donation in many decades, and we had a couple big boxes of books to take with us. All this was done on trust, for the donation was only promised. Reuben's windfall from the sale of the possum was deposited safely in the bank. He had $500 with him, but that was reserved for our travel expenses. We promised the old lady we would send the money, and she took us at our word. She insisted on writing dry rot on the cover of every book we took with a big marker, though. She said she was covering her ass. Chapstick application break. Back on the highway to Memphis, Reuben asked me what I wanted him to read. I told him I didn't care as long as it wasn't William Faulkner. I hate William Faulkner's purple prose with a purple passion. Reuben knew of my father's scholarly devotion to the man and said, Speaking of Faulkner, we should pay your parents a visit. Have you called them lately? He was always so worried about my damn parents. I talked to my sister on the way to New York. That's been forever. I didn't say anything for a while. I just drove. He made me feel guilty. Finally, I said, Pick out a book, please, and read. I just thought of something, said Reuben. What about the writings of the son of Faulkner? Yes? That green suitcase in the back is full of them. We should give them to your father. Didn't you tell me he was a devotee of Faulkner? As I said, Reuben knew very well my father's scholarly devotion. He was trying to get under my skin for some reason. The world's most prominent, I said, as you well know. As much as I wanted to avoid my family, I knew the correct place for those manuscripts was with my father. I owed it to the son of Faulkner. I'll make a deal with you, Reuben, I said. I'll write my parents a long letter explaining everything, including where I am and how I'm doing, and we'll drop it off with the briefcase at their house, preferably in the middle of the night. Carry on. And we'll also state that you have legal ownership of the writings of the son of Faulkner. You still have the IOU, right? Of course. What do you think? Works for me, Stanton. And I'll stop giving you a hard time about your parents. Thank God. You're right, though. They deserve to know how I'm doing. Now read something. Okay. Reuben turned and stretched to rummage through the nearest box of books. You said you aren't particularly well read, right? He asked. Embarrassingly so, outside of you-know-who, I replied. As long as it's just between you and me, I'll be honest. I was rebelling against my father by actively disliking the writer he is so passionate about. I rebelled against all books. Steinbeck is the lone exception. So you don't have any preferences? Pick one you think might help my songwriting and overall growth and perspective. Reuben said, Aha! And returned to his normal position in the passenger seat with a book in his hand. 1984 by George Orwell. He began reading and did a wonderful job of it. He voiced characters different and everything. I was quite taken by the story and his narration. What's totalitarian mean? I asked after Reuben had used the word when we were discussing a passage of the book. Like Karl Marx. Refresh me. I didn't know a damn thing about Karl Marx, other than recognizing the name and knowing he was a bad guy. I'd been an okay student, but I retained little of the knowledge I'd learned, especially after being out in the world and seeing how useless most of what I'd been taught was. The exception to that was World War II and the Holocaust. That had been handed down to me via the oral tradition, which made it more real than the words in any textbook. Reuben sure was smart. He explained that Marx's ideas were the real-life equivalent of Big Brother, and that George Orwell hadn't conjured up 1984 purely from imagination. It had a firm basis in reality, thanks to leaders like Lenin and Stalin and Mussolini, all assholes. He also told me about the cult of personality concept and propaganda. It could happen again, he said. It will happen again. And it's only going to get worse as technology allows the government to spy on individual citizens. Then he said, "Heard of Chairman Mao? I'm all ears." After another half hour of discussion, I asked, "How do you know all this?" "I was a professor of modern history at NYU." "Do I even know you?" I asked. "You know the real me, not the me of my resume and degrees. That's exactly why I left New York in the first place. Academia became a prison." "Are you sure you want to return?" "I'm ready," he said. "You went to New Orleans to reinvent yourself, right?" "Not consciously." "But that's what you did." "Yeah. I went to New Orleans for the same reason. I reinvented myself. Now I'm ready to go home." "Are you in a hurry?" I asked. "Hell no. Let's take our time and read some more books." So we spent the next month driving aimlessly around the Midwest, and Reuben helped me become an intellectual. Okay, that's the end of chapter 16, page 203. And we start chapter 17. I hope you detected the tongue planted firmly in my cheek on that last sentence. If I can't have a bit of fun writing my autobiography, then why do it? I did learn a hell of a lot from Reuben, though. A month is a long time to spend with someone, especially if you are rarely more than 3 feet apart. We drove 10 to 12 hours a day, interrupted by intermittent picnicking, and exploration of countryside by foot. Other than 2 or 3 nights, we slept in the back of my Chevy, side by side, just like my father and the captain had before us, talking late into the night. When I make comparisons between my life and my father's, I must remind you that I knew virtually nothing about my father during my time with Reuben. All that information came later, and I don't want to tell you how I learned it just yet. I neglected to mention it, but we did drop off the suitcase full of the son of Faulkner's writings, along with my letter, on my parents' porch in the middle of the night. It was a minor miracle we got away with the mission undetected. We got snockered that night since we had a hotel room with no television set and had to stay up until 4 a.m. to pull off the caper. We drank with the intention to honor the spirit of the son of Faulkner, but it was more to numb our pain from remembering his tragic fate more than anything. But it was more to numb our pain from remembering his tragic fate than anything. Whatever our motivations, we pulled it off, and the suitcase was left on my parents' porch with the writings of the son of Faulkner and my letter inside. At the end of the month, we rolled into New York City. My head was full of new knowledge, book smarts, courtesy of Reuben and the authors we read, and also the many observations along the way. What happened on these cross-country jaunts, though I didn't know it at the time, was that they created reference points I could use as an artist. In the future, if I mentioned my car breaking down in a song, I knew what that felt like, because it happened to us just outside of Davenport, Iowa. Now you know where Davenport Breakdown came from. That's just one example, but there were dozens more. It gave my subsequent songs an authenticity and depth some of my early tunes lacked. It was a natural progression as an artist. Rarely does a musician come out with their best work at first. Most peak on their second or third album and decline from there. If they don't find early success, their hunger for it may keep their work at a high level past that. Rare is the artist who maintains a high level of quality over a long career. I must note that I had never recorded at that point, so my first album included songs written after my trip with Ruben, along some composed before. It resulted in a very strong record that has sold millions over the years, although at the time of its release, it was overshadowed by Bob Dylan. Who else? Okay, that's page 206. This will complete this episode, and I hope you're enjoying the story. Drop me a line, paperbackrocker@live.com, and say hi. Let me know what you think. Buy my books at Amazon, and put my music under the name of Saturn Lander in your Spotify playlist, and you can purchase that music from iTunes or CDBaby, or contact me if you need links to all my artistic output. Buy my mom's book, Wildflowers and Broken Gods by Linda Severson. Thanks for being with me. Have a great week. I will see you in the very near future with installment 37 of the Blue Whiskey novel. Have a great week, my friends. See you soon.
The Paperback Rocker has signed off.